My rich dad said, starting a business is like jumping out of an airplane without a parachute. In midair, the entrepreneur begins building a parachute and hopes it opens before hitting the ground. He also said, if the entrepreneur hits the ground before building a parachute, it is very tough climbing back into the plane and trying again. For those of you familiar with the Rich Dad books, you know that I have jumped out of the plane many times and failed to build the parachute. The good news is that I hit the ground and bounced. This book will share with you some of my jumps, falls, and bounces. Many of my failures and successes were small ones, so the bounce was not that painful, that is, until I started my nylon and Velcro wallet business. I will go into further detail throughout the book because I made many mistakes, and learned from them along the way. The success of that business was sky high and so was the fall. It took me over a year to recover from that powerful bounce. The good news is that it was the best business experience of my life. I learned much about business and about myself through the process of rebuilding. The crack in the dam. One of the reasons I fell so hard in the nylon surfer wallet business was that I did not pay attention to the little things. There is some truth to the age-old statement, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. My little surfer wallet business grew so fast that the business was a lot bigger than the capabilities of the 3 entrepreneurs who created the business. Instead of creating a business, we had created Drive, Frankenstein's monster, and did not realize it. In other words, our sudden success was accelerating our failures. The real problem was we did not know we were failing. We thought we were successful. We thought we were rich. We thought we were geniuses. To the extent that we bothered to consult expert advisors, like patent attorneys, we did not listen to them. As 3 successful entrepreneurs in our late 20s and early 30s, we took our minds off the business and partied into the night. We actually thought we had built a business. We actually thought we were entrepreneurs. We actually believed our own story of success. We started bragging. Champagne started to flow. It was not long before we each had fast sports cars and were dating even faster women. Success and money had blinded us. We could not see the cracks forming in the wall of the dam. Finally, the dam broke. The house of cards started tumbling down around us. Our parachute did not open. Too much success. The point in sharing my entrepreneurial stupidity is that many people think that it is the lack of success that kills a business. And in many cases that is true. The failure of my surfer wallet business was a valuable experience because I found out early in my career as an entrepreneur that too much success can also kill a business. The point I am making is that a poorly conceived business can fail whether it is initially successful or not. Hard work covers up poor design. A poorly conceived business startup may be able to survive as long as the entrepreneur works hard and holds the business together with sheer determination. In other words, hard work can cover up a poorly designed business and keep it from failing. The world is filled with millions of small business entrepreneurs who are able to keep their leaky business afloat with hard work, sheer willpower, duct tape, and baling wire. The problem is, if they stop working, the business breaks apart and sinks. All over the world, entrepreneurs kiss their families goodbye and head off to their own businesses, their pieces of the rock. Many of them go to work, thinking that working harder and longer will solve their business problems such as not enough sales, unhappy employees, incompetent advisors, not enough free cash flow to grow the business, suppliers raising their prices, insurance premiums going up, landlords raising the rent, changing government regulations, government inspectors, increasing taxes, back taxes, unhappy customers, non-paying customers, and not enough time in the day, to name a few of the daily challenges. Many entrepreneurs do not realize that many of the problems their businesses face today began yesterday, long before there was a business. One of the primary reasons for the high failure rate of small businesses is sheer exhaustion. It's tough to make money and to keep going when so much of your time is tied up in activities that do not make you any money or that cost you money without offsetting income. If you are thinking about starting your own business, before you quit your job, you might want to talk to an entrepreneur about how much time he or she spends on non-income producing activities to run his or her business. Also ask how he or she handles this challenge. As a friend of mine once said, "I'm so busy taking care of my business I don't have time to make any money." Do long hours and hard work guarantee success? A friend of mine quit his high-paying job with a large bank in Honolulu and opened a tiny lunch shop in the industrial part of town. He had always wanted to be his own boss and do his own thing. As a loan officer for the bank, he saw that the richest customers of the bank were entrepreneurs, and he wanted a piece of the action, so he quit his job and went for his dreams. Every morning, he and his mom would get up at 4 o'clock to begin preparing for the lunch crowd. The two of them worked very hard, scrimping, cutting corners, in order to serve great tasting lunches with generous portions at low prices. For years I would stop by, have lunch, and find out how they were doing. They seemed very happy, enjoying their customers and their work. "Someday we'll expand," said my friend. "Someday we'll hire people to do the hard work for us." The problem was that someday never came. His mom passed away, the business closed, and my friend took a job as a manager of a fast food franchise restaurant. He returned to being an employee. "The last time I saw him," he said, "the pay isn't great, but at least the hours are better." In his case, his parachute did not open. He hit the ground before he built a business. Now I can hear some of you saying, "At least he went for it." Or, "It was just bad luck." If his mom had lived, they might have expanded and gone on to make a lot of money. Or, "How can you criticize such good hardworking people?" And I agree with these sentiments. My intent is not to criticize them. Although not related to them, I love the two of them dearly. I knew they were happy, yet it pained me to see them work so hard and not get ahead, day after day. I only relate this story to make the same point. The business began to fail before there was a business. It was poorly conceived before he quit his job. Is being an entrepreneur for you? If this story about working long hours or failing if unsuccessful and possibly failing if successful or jumping out of a plane without a parachute and bouncing frightens you, then being an entrepreneur may not be for you. But if the stories intrigue you or challenge you, then read on. After finishing this book, at least you will have a better idea of what entrepreneurs need to know to succeed. You will also have a better understanding of how to create, design, and build a business that grows with or without you, and possibly makes you rich beyond your wildest dreams. After all, if you are going to jump out of a plane without a parachute, you may as well win big if you are going to win at all. The job of an entrepreneur. The most important job of the entrepreneur begins before there is a business or employees. The job of an entrepreneur is to design a business that can grow, employ many people, add value to its customers, be a responsible corporate citizen, bring prosperity to all those that work on the business, be charitable, and eventually no longer need the entrepreneur. Before there is a business, a successful entrepreneur is designing this type of business in his or her mind's eye. According my rich dad, this is the job of a true entrepreneur. Failing leads to success. After one of my demoralizing business failures, I went to Rich Dad and asked, "So what did I do wrong? I thought I designed it well." "Obviously you didn't," Rich Dad said with a smirk. "How many times do I have to do this? I'm the biggest failure I know." Rich Dad said, "Losers quit when they fail. Winners fail until they succeed." Shuffling the papers at his desk for a moment, he then looked up at me and said, "The world is filled with want-to-be entrepreneurs. They sit behind desks, have important sounding titles like vice president, branch manager, or supervisor, and some even take home a decent paycheck. These want-to-be entrepreneurs dream of someday starting their own business empire, and maybe someday some of them will. Yet I believe most will never make the leap. Most will have some excuse, some rationalization, such as, when the kids are grown. Or, I'll go back to school first. Or, when I have enough money saved." "But they never jump from the plane," I said, finishing his thoughts. Rich Dad nodded. "What kind of entrepreneur do you want to be?" Rich Dad went on to explain that the world was filled with different types of entrepreneurs. There are entrepreneurs who are big and small, rich and poor, honest and crooked, for profit and not for profit, saint and sinner, small town and international, and successes and failures. He said, "The word entrepreneur is a big word and it means different things to different people." The cash flow quadrant. As I mentioned in the introduction, the cash flow quadrant explains that there are 4 different types of people that make up the world of business, and they are often technically, emotionally, and mentally different people. E stands for employee. S stands for self-employed or small business owner. B stands for big business owner, over 500 employees. I stands for investor. For example, an employee will always say the same words, whether he or she is the president or janitor of the company. An employee can always be heard saying, "I'm looking for a safe, secure job with benefits." The operative words are safe and secure. In other words, the emotion of fear often keeps them boxed in that quadrant. If they want to change quadrants, not only are there skills and technical things to learn, in many cases there are also emotional challenges to overcome. A person in the S quadrant may be heard saying, "If you want it done right, do it yourself." In many cases this person's challenge is learning to trust other people to do a better job than he or she can. This lack of trust often keeps them small, since it's hard to grow a business without eventually trusting other people. If S quadrant people do grow, they often grow as a partnership, which in many cases is a group of S's binding together to do the same job. B quadrant people are always looking for good people and good business systems. They do not necessarily want to do the work. They want to build a business to do the work. A true B quadrant entrepreneur can grow his or her business all over the world. An S quadrant entrepreneur is often restricted to a small area, an area he or she can personally control. Of course, there are always exceptions. An I quadrant person, the investor, is looking for a smart S or B to take care of his or her money and grow it. In training his son and me, Rich Dad was training us to first build a successful S quadrant business that had the capability of expanding into a successful B quadrant business. That is what this book is about. What kind of business do you want to build? As part of my entrepreneurial training with Rich Dad, he encouraged his son and me to go out and study as many different types of business systems as we could. He said, "How can you be an entrepreneur designing a business if you do not know about the different types of businesses and entrepreneurs?" Self-employed entrepreneurs. Rich Dad was adamant in explaining that many entrepreneurs were not business owners but self-employed entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs who owned a job, not a business. He said, "You are probably self-employed when your name is the name of the business, your income stops if you stop working, if clients come to see you, your employees call you if there is a problem. You may also be self-employed if you are the smartest, most talented, or the best educated person in your business." He had nothing against self-employed entrepreneurs. He simply wanted us to know the difference between entrepreneurs who own businesses and those who own jobs. Consultants, musicians, actors, cleaning people, restaurant owners, small shop owners, and most small business people fall into owning jobs instead of businesses, or the S quadrant. The main point Rich Dad was making about the difference between a self-employed entrepreneur and a big business entrepreneur was that many self-employed businesses have a tough time growing into a big business. In other words, they have a real challenge going from the S quadrant to the B quadrant. Why? Again, the answer is that the business was poorly designed before there was a business. It was doomed before it was even started. Rich Dad himself started out as a self-employed entrepreneur in the S quadrant. Yet in his mind, he was designing a very large business, run by people much smarter and more capable than him. Before he started his business, he designed his S quadrant business to be able to grow into the B quadrant. Professionals and tradespeople. He also wanted us to know that many professional people such as doctors, lawyers, accountants, architects, plumbers, and electricians started a self-employed style of business based on a profession or a technical trade. Many of these professions and trades require government licenses to operate. Also included in this category are professional salespeople, many of whom are licensed independent consultants, such as real estate, insurance, and securities salespeople. Many of these types of people are technically self-employed entrepreneurs, aka independent contractors. The problem with this type of business is that there is not really a business to sell because there really isn't a business outside the individual owner. In many cases, there really isn't an asset. The business owner is the asset. If he or she does sell, he or she will not typically get the higher multiples a true B quadrant business can command. In addition, he or she may have to agree to stay on for the successful continuation of the business. In essence, they go from being the owner to the buyer's employee. In my Rich Dad's mind, it made no sense to work hard and not build an asset. This is why he advised his son and me against ever wanting to become employees. He said, "Why work hard building nothing?" Later in this book, we will go into some ways this type of entrepreneur can create a business asset, an asset they can build and maybe sell someday. Mom and pop operations. A very large category of entrepreneurs is often referred to as mom and pop businesses. This type of business gets its name because many small businesses are family businesses. As an example, my mom's mom owned a little convenience store that the family took turns working in. The challenge for growth in a mom and pop operation is nepotism. Many people put their children in charge of the business, even though their children may be incompetent, because blood is thicker than water. Often the children don't share the passion for the business that their parents had, or they don't have the entrepreneurial drive to lead the business. Franchises. A franchise, such as McDonald's, is in theory a turnkey operation. The entrepreneur sells a ready-made business to a person who does not want to go through the creative and development phase of starting a business. It's like being an instant entrepreneur. One advantage to some franchises is that banks are more inclined to lend money to someone who wants to buy a franchise than to a person who wants to start a business from scratch. The banks are more comfortable with the successful track record of other similar franchises, and the banks value the mentoring programs that most franchises have to assist the new entrepreneur. One of the biggest problems with big-name franchises is that they are generally more expensive to get into and have little flexibility for a want-to-be entrepreneur. Franchises are the type of businesses that typically face legal issues and often end up in court. These fights are some of the most vicious fights in the business world. Reportedly, one of the main reasons for fighting is that people who buy a franchise business do not want to run it the way the franchisor, the person who created the business, wants them to run it. Another reason is if the franchise does not do well financially, the franchisee wants to blame the franchisor for the lack of business success. If you do not want to follow the directions of the franchisor to a T, it is best you design, create, and start your own business. Network marketing and direct sales. The network marketing and direct sales industry is recognized by many to be the fastest growing business model in the world today. It is also the most controversial.